You're listening to The Higher Ed Marketer, the podcast for marketing professionals in higher education. Join us every week as we talk to the industry's greatest minds in student recruitment, donor relations, marketing trends, new technologies, and much more. If you're looking for conversations centered around where marketing in higher ed is going, this podcast is for you. Let's get into the show.
Welcome to the Higher Ed Marketer Podcast. My name is Troy Singer, here with my friend and co-host Bart Kaler. And today, the topic that we will be discussing with our guest is rebranding while honoring the legacy. Our guest today is Dr. Mark Milioni, president of Mission University in Springfield, Missouri, formerly known as Baptist Bible College. Now, Dr. Milioni has led the institution through one of the most significant transitions in its long history, rebranding a legacy Bible college into a forward-facing multi-program university while maintaining its deep faith-based roots.
Yeah, I loved this conversation, Troy. Mark's great. I've known Mark probably for 13 years, I think is what we figured out on the podcast. And just under his leadership, he's done such a great job. He inherited a little bit of a mess, and so he talks about that pretty openly and candidly, which I really appreciate. But I think he also recognized that some of the name of what they had been known as throughout their history was holding them back to where they could really continue to grow. And so he talks about that process, full transparency. Kaler Solutions was a part of that process at the beginning, and he talks a little bit about that. But I think it's just really important to understand what they did with intentionality and clarity, and how that's starting to play out and really pay dividends in what they did. And so it's fun to kind of hear the full story today and the why behind what they did and how you could do that too if that's something that you need to do.
Yes. Here's that fascinating conversation with Dr. Mark Milioni. Mark, we always start our conversations with our guest with this question. What is something interesting or surprising that you've learned recently that you think our listeners would appreciate?
You know, I think sometimes we underestimate our students. So I guess one of the things that I'm reminded of, I don't know that this is a brand new thing I learned, but how resilient students are. This fall, they're coming to a campus that they're familiar with, but there's a couple faces that they loved that are not here. And whenever you lose some beloved professors, I'm always concerned, are we going to have some fallout from students? Are they going to be upset or they get here and they see each other and they move on. I worry about things like that, but students, within a couple of days, they have moved on. Life moves on for them in a lot of other areas. So, it's a good reminder that they don't spend all of their time thinking and worrying about things that I do, but I think they do. We spend time worrying about probably more than we should because they move on. So I think that's the biggest thing I'm reminded of just in the last couple of weeks. We started 2 weeks ago. So students are resilient. They move on quickly. That's a good reminder for me.
A good reminder and a message that most of our listeners can benefit from. So thank you so much. Yeah. Our overall topic today is going to be rebranding while honoring legacy. And Mark, before we get into the rebranding story, would like to set the stage a little bit. When you first stepped into leadership at was once then Baptist Bible College, what kind of institution did you inherit, and what were some of the early priorities or challenges that you faced?
So our institution is pretty well known in the Christian college world. We've been around. This is our 75th year. And at one time we were very, very large, very influential. But I inherited an immediate financial crisis. We owed everybody. Our budget was $2 to $3 million off. It was just a very bad situation. So from 40 years ago, literally 40 years of straight decline. Our founder began the college in 1950 and was an incredible leader, and the college grew for the first 25 years. And then for the next 40 years, It just began declining and declining and declining in every way. It wasn't an immediate thing, just a slow, thing. And so I come on the scene, and it was just really, really tough, really bad. I did not know or understand everything, and I don't think anybody else did either. That's part of the problem. I should be so angry with the trustees, but they believed what they were told. And so it's an important lesson right there. So the finances were bad. Enrollment was bad. Morale was bad. Hope was pretty much gone. So it took every bit of my leadership skills that I had, every bit of my strength, and honestly, I had to lay off a lot of good people. It wasn't their fault, but I sacrificed my own salary. I worked with everybody that we owed money to. I learned a lot of the business side. You have to, I was a pastor of a large church, but you have to put your business hat on and learn this. And so often, this is a huge lesson that I learned, I think, is from the church world and from the Christian college world. A lot of times Christian entities are slow to make tough personnel decisions.
Yeah.
We don't want to hurt people. They've been here forever. They're related to so-and-so. But I've had to come learn this the hard way. My job is not to employ people. My job is to educate people.
Yeah.
And I've just reminded myself of that over and over and over. So we don't exist for the purpose of providing you or somebody with a job. There are colleges and churches suffering to this day because they're staying alive just to provide jobs, just to provide, because we can't let them go. It's a hard but true reality. You've got to make some tough choices to turn around.
Yeah, you and I have talked about this before, Mark, because, how long have you been at the school? Because I think you and I have known each other when you first started.
13 years.
13 years. So we've known each other for about that time. And in full transparency, we've done some work together, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But I think what you described is so common among small privates, and it's not necessarily only in the faith-based world. I see that at other small privates where they're just hard to make decisions, or they have tenured faculty, or there's decisions that were made a long time ago that are not applicable to today. And so that idea of being able to pivot and be a school of agility, I think, is so important. And sometimes when you pivot, when you make those changes, when you start to assess what the world is, what's going on around you in the world, because the world changes even though the colleges sometimes don't, you start to realize that maybe the way we're presenting ourselves into the world isn't as valid as it once was either. And so at what point do you think it started to become clear that the name Baptist Bible College might not reflect where the institution was going, where your leadership was looking down the road and seeing where you guys needed to be? And what were some of those first signs or conversations that pointed in that direction?
So I came here in the 80s to study for ministry. And I think even back then, I always thought it was kind of difficult for business students. They came and get a business degree, and then to go out and you put a resume together and interview, and you're almost apologizing that I got a business degree from Baptist Bible College. It just doesn't make a lot of sense in the business world. In the ministry world, it's fine. Yeah. It works great. We have a great reputation there. But my wife, my daughters, they got an education degree here, and I kind of thought the same thing. So for a long time, I just know, being a pastor out in the world, you realize not everybody has the same view of that name. So I began thinking about how we're moving forward, and that really was not my priority to change the name. It just was just something, over the years, and you guys might understand this, as the president, I get a lot of free advice.
I bet you do.
But I always listen, and I combine that, and I think about it. I had a couple trustees mention, what if we change the name? I had one come up and say, if you had a different name, I could send a lot more students there, because people think all you do is ministry. But there are families in churches that want their kids in our environment, but they may not be going into full-time ministry. And so some of those things just began coming together. And I began learning, you know what? This has been talked about with previous administrations. And it was good to hear that I'm not, trying to break fresh ground here. It's been discussed. So by the time we started talking about it at the trustee level, they were immediately all on board.
Okay.
And everybody we talked to was, and so that began another whole long process. Once you kind of feel like you've got the go ahead to begin exploring and talking about it. But they were all on board, and that gave me a little bit of freedom.
Yeah, and that makes a big difference because, I mean, whether it's a Bible college changing it to a university or a different name in some ways, and this is any school is going to be dealing with. There's always that deep history and emotional tie to the name. And I know that's something that you and I talked a lot about in the process was the fact that, yes, the board might be on K, and we know it's right for the institution, but you've got alumni, you've got donors, you've got a lot of people that are tied emotionally to that. And so that can be hard. Because sometimes just change is hard. And you know that from the church world as well. And so how did people start to respond once you started floating the idea beyond the board? I mean, the board was primed and ready. But outside of that, what was that like and how did you start managing that change?
I knew we needed to be careful. I knew it would be a big shock. I mean, we were capital B Baptists, capital B Bible. I mean, we were one of the leaders of the fundamentalist movement.
Yeah.
This is where Jerry Falwell went to college. So we have a large fellowship of churches, and many of them are still very conservative and very Baptist. So I respect that. And so I wanted to be careful. I'm not out to just, there are a lot of guys that love to push buttons and to get attention for being ultra cool and trendy. I'm not that guy.
Yeah,
I'm the opposite. So I did expect pushback, and we'll talk about the process in a minute, but I received a lot of fan mail. But it was very well received. I think one of the biggest shocks I had was how well it was received from everybody. Nobody that pushed back supported us or has sent a student here in decades. Everybody, all of our supporters, they were either very open and they were very excited about it, or they were like, okay, I'm giving you this and I'm watching, you know. But I had so many say, this is perfect. I have students, I have families, they want your atmosphere, they want your college, but they may not be headed into a full-time ministry vocation. And so it just opened the door. So overall, it's been a very, very good experience. And I do think a whole lot of it had to do with the slowness and how we rolled it out. You know, it's been very, very well received.
I think that's important to kind of point out for a second, because I think I was asked to go and do a board presentation this weekend at one of my clients' schools. And we were talking about mission fit, and everybody talks about, everybody knows that I wrote a book about that. And the idea that, you know what, not everybody's going to buy everything that you have. And I think that a lot of people are, especially boards, have a hard time with that. It's like, what do you mean that we aren't for everybody? It's like, well, you're not for everybody. There's a lot of people who don't want what you have, and that's okay. I'd rather them know that at the beginning and move on before they invest a lot of money into our admissions team and things like that. And so, but I think it's the same thing for those relationships that are tangential. There's going to be a loud minority in anything that we do. And if we pay attention to the loud minority instead of the quiet majority, we get paralyzed. We don't make decisions. And it doesn't matter if you're in a Bible college or if you're in a state institution, wherever you are, there's always going to be pushback. And I see that with AI right now, where, schools are paralyzed because there's 3 faculty members who refuse to, have a ChatGPT account. And so it paralyzes the whole institution when the rest of them need it. And so, would you kind of agree with that's kind of the experience that you've had with this rollout?
Yeah. It's interesting. We're talking about this the week that Cracker Barrel is in the news.
Yeah.
Talking about rolling out new brands. And I think it says a lot with the name that we landed on, that we're staying true to who we are. And I think that's all that people, I got the question. So are you still Baptist? So you still believe the Bible? So you're still,
right,
conservative? Are you? And of course, all of those things are true. But it was time to move forward and to move our college forward. And honestly, I got a whole lot of feedback that's like, finally,
yeah,
good for you. It's about time. And so it turned out to be really, really well. But our process was slow. It was clear. It was simple. We developed a whole plan to roll it out. Our new look is not flashy. It's not trendy. We are as professional, as academic looking as possible. And I wanted everything to feel like we are a major academic institution, not Journey Church or a cool, trendy, flashy name. We were very careful to undergird who we are as an academic institution.
Perfect.
So then let's talk about the name Mission University. And it feels simple but meaningful. And what ideas or values were you hoping to reflect in the name? And what did you want it to say to prospective students and families?
I wanted a name that people would respect. I wanted a name that would undergird our beliefs, our values, and it still suggests forward progress. It still suggests that we have a mission in front of us that we're going out to accomplish for the Lord. And I just feel like we did. Once we landed on this name, it all it came together. It came together for me and for us. And so, and that was a good little process. I mean, that was a lengthy, fun little process. So, the other side of the leadership part of this is, I had been here for 10 years when we did it. I was not new. I was not coming up with this cool idea as a new president. I had credibility. I've been through the storms. We have turned around financially. We have turned around enrollment. So it wasn't like, and I mean, talk about this more, but this was not a silver bullet for us. Yep. It was a help along the way. It was part of a future plan. But it was not just our hope. We hope this works. We were going to exist either way. This was just the next right thing for us to do. And we felt that, from the Lord. We've had peace about this and clarity all along the way. So I'm not new at this. I know this fellowship of churches. I've been in most of them. I know the leaders. I have credibility there. They know my hard work. They know my sacrifice personally. And so combining all of that, goes into this. This is not just let's have a press conference. It was a big deal.
I think that floats a couple things to the top I wanted to kind of focus on before we moved on to the next thing, is the fact that, one, it isn't a silver bullet, and there are no such silver bullets in higher education. I think everybody's looking for that silver bullet. Oh, if we buy more names. Oh, if we change our name. If we do this. If we bring in this person. No, it takes hard work, but before the hard work, it takes courageous leadership. And I know that, Mark and I both know a friend of ours, Tim Fuller, used to be at Credo, and they talked a lot. And, Joanna Saladay has a great book on institutions that thrive. And in that book, she talks about courageous leadership and how important that is. And it's courageous leadership as well as strategic leadership. And so the idea that you don't just go in and start, brand new president, start throwing things around and moving things, that you have to earn it. And I think that trust is such a big part of anything that you do, especially in a rebrand. And I think that's part of the, going back to Cracker Barrel, I think that's the part of the problem, is that they were already changing a lot of things before they did the rebrand that were having people question and that they were losing their trust. Because obviously they're trying to rebrand for millennials. I get that. And I say that, yes, you need to be doing that. You if to survive, you have to get that, Magnolia crowd into Cracker Barrel, as opposed to just leaning on the boomers that aren't going to be around forever. And so I get their need, but they didn't have that trust after they started doing some things. And so, so sorry, I'm on a tangent, but let's get back to the rebranding of Mission University. And I know that we were a part of that. And so we had a chance to collaborate with you on some of the early processes of that, especially in the naming. So maybe just kind of pull the curtain back a little bit and talk about what that inside process was for you and when you got us engaged and what worked and how did all that evolve out?
Sure. Well, once we began really the agreement to go down this trail, I kind of took the lead on it.
Right.
And I really kept it close to myself. We did not discuss, because I didn't want stuff to get out there.
Right.
I began just jotting down names here or there that I thought, what about this name? What about that name? You guys probably live like I do. I live with a notebook, and I just I can show you all those old names in a notebook, and then thinking through that. And I've known Bart for several years, just through ABHE, and I know you did branding. I did my homework. Okay. I looked at your stuff. I looked at your background. I looked at your book. I did all that I could to understand this. And I felt like, and I think this is an important point, I needed an outside expert to give me advice here. I know what I thought, and I know what we think, but I wanted, so this is the biggest decision that a person or a college or business could ever make.
Yeah.
I knew we had to get it right.
Yeah.
So my first question, I got a hold of you, and our first meeting was, my first question was, I want you to study our current name. Do we really need to change? Because I'm about to enter into maybe a life or job ending deal if this doesn't go well. So do we really need to make this change? And so that's why I engaged you. I was willing to pay you guys all to do that. And so I don't know if you remember, that was my first question. And so you went back with your team, and you had several hours of meetings and discussion and so forth. I wanted you to tell me if it was the right thing to do. And you came back and said, yeah, we do. We think it would be a good thing for you to do that. But I was fine. If you came back and said, no, I think you could market that, I think you're okay, right, I would have been good with that. I wanted an expert opinion, and I got it. So you came back and had some productive, things from your thing. But I needed that confirmation from somebody, not me, from somebody, not us, just looking at, the whole college world. So then we began the discussion. So what name is there? What should we name it? And I shared my list of names. Your team came up with a list of names, and I purposefully inserted Mission University as one of the names. Right. I did not put it first, last. I put it in the middle. I just submitted it. I did not tell you that was my favorite. Nope. I did not tell you I liked it. And your team, we met a couple times. And we went over names, and they had, you've got all the paperwork. They had paragraphs on each name and what they thought, the pros and the cons and yeses and nos. But they said, I remember we went like in a 3-2-1 order, and they came back and said, but by far, our favorite name is Mission University. That's gold. They loved it. They said, man, you could market that. Yep. And really, really loved it. And I just went, I knew it. I knew it. But I really did let the process play out. Yeah. And I was very, excited about how it came out. It wasn't just me. It was the right name at the right time for us. Yeah.
And I think that's important to say that, whether it's a name or whether it's other things, especially with branding, schools are so insular that we tend to look inside ourselves and like I said, sometimes there's those very vocal minorities, and we have to kind of move beyond ourselves to see really what's the public perception, what's the internal perception, how does that work, are we living out the brand promises, what is it saying about who we are? And so really that mission really fit who you guys were and what you were trying to do so well. And I remember part of the process too that I think was important to share, Mark, is the fact that even before that name was like, that's it, let's go, there was a lot of extra work with legal, with validating outside to make sure that we weren't going to run into problems. Because I know that there have been other schools that made a name change that made 2 or 3 within 3 years because, oops. Yeah. And so you and I both had experience of where that was. We had seen that in the marketplace, and we're like, we're not going to do that. So I know you had worked with counsel. We had worked with some research, and that was a big part of it as well.
It was. I did not want anything to go wrong. I overly thought through. I overthink everything, but I just thought through this, and based upon some other colleges and difficulties, I wanted it trademarked. Mm-hmm. I wanted to own this name, own this brand, no question, no hesitation. I talked to a couple of other presidents that had problems. And before even talking to them, I found the best intellectual properties attorney I could find. Mm-hmm. And well, it cost us a lot of money, but we own it, right. And we went through the process. When we began the process, there were actually a couple of other defunct mission universities, and there was trademark issues. And so we actually had to go to federal court. And they were defunct, and nobody ever responded from their side. So we had them removed. Then we had a clear path to getting the name, and we did through the trademark. But that took over a year and a half, and it shouldn't take long. It took a long time. I think you and I mean, you would text me or email me and ask me, so where are things at? Like, we're still waiting. Still waiting. But you know what? Then all of a sudden, it happened.
Yeah.
It happened. And that began another whole, okay, now let's go. So what's next? But that gave us time because we put a lot of other things I had already thought through. When it happens, this is what we got to do. This is how we do it. You got to work with all the details. So I would say get legal, get good, not just a lawyer. You need a experienced intellectual properties attorney to help you with this.
Great.
And then you work with your state, you work with your creditors, you work with your website, you work with your domain. Man, there's
a lot happens before it becomes a logo, folks.
That's right.
So you've really got to do some extra work on that. And not only that is once because you guys did the legal, then you went ahead and developed out the logo and worked on some of those internal rollouts. And how did you guys prepare the internal community, especially faculty, staff, and students? Because, I mean, certainly there's a level of the ways that you roll this out. You don't just, and I think that's part of the problem with Cracker Barrels. They just kind of open it up to the world, and it's like, oh my goodness, everybody.
Yeah.
So what was that strategic process of just rolling it out to your different stakeholders?
So it began, obviously, with the trustees. We had never formally adopted that name until it was ours, until we had the trademark. Then once we did that, then they knew, our faculty knew there was a name change discussion.
Right.
But they, didn't know all the details. And so we had just a fun, little get together, fed them, talked about some things, and then I showed them, our name and how it would be official, in the next little bit here. And then we planned some things for the future, but on the backside, then I began doing the process of working with our state. You have to do that before you work with accreditation, getting all of those in place because I didn't want to make an announcement with those not ready to go. So went through all of that, and those happened pretty quickly. But then we had, after this happened the month of December, and then in late January, I had a chapel service where we announced it to the students. We prepared a really nice video. It's online. You can find it. YouTube, you can see it. That was great. That went really well. It involved some very significant stakeholders and supporters, respected people in our movement, and so forth. Then we had a public press conference day and had a bunch of people in our chapel come on campus. And we really made the headlines here for a couple of days. So it was really, really good. Treated everybody, had T-shirts for everybody, and just had a lot of interviews, did a lot of public things. That week, literally, our athletic teams put on new uniforms. We put up some signage that week. our new website went live during the press conference so that we could announce mission.edu is now live. Which is another thing. That was a process getting that nailed down.
Educause.
What a great URL.
Yeah.
You know, I love our domain name, and it's so easy and helpful and simple. And so that turned out great as well. So after that, just an hour or so later, I did a podcast with the director of communications for the Baptist Bible Fellowship. It's on YouTube. You can find that. Go to the bbfi.org or BBFI channel.
Right.
You can find us there. You can find that podcast. But that was I don't know, about 45 minutes of answering a lot of these questions. Why should a college or why should a church or a fellowship continue to trust us, or what's going on here? Why? And that got great response. It answered, I'm a pastor, you know, so I answered their questions that I knew they would have.
Yeah.
You know, and that, so that would be very helpful for people to see that video as well.
Yeah. And I think before we move on to the next thing, Troy, I just wanted to say, if you look at all this, it's intentional and it's paced and it's strategic and it isn't rushed. If you're going to do something this big, you've got to do it with intention. And that's why it's not a silver bullet, because silver bullets have to be shot out of the fire, the gun fast, and they have to do something. This is not a silver bullet, but it is something that needed to be done. So kudos to you, Mark, on that.
Yep.
Mark, we would love to talk, or for you to talk about now, rebuilding through programs and partnerships, because as we all know, a new name alone isn't enough. You have to live into the brand itself. So what were the first major moves that you made to reinforce Mission University's new direction?
Well, it was a good time to unveil not only a new name, but some strategic partnerships. And we did that as part of our news conference and some of the things that we put out. We had developed partnerships with a couple of local colleges that offer programs that we don't. And you know, a lot of colleges, they add a lot of programs. And I've learned, just because you have some interest does not mean you're going to be able to populate. I've made that mistake. So I've learned. So rather than us do that, we develop partnerships with colleges that do a great job of that, you know, locally, as well as Indiana Wesleyan's one of our biggest partners. We have a lot of students that have a partnership with us and them in getting their degree work. So one of the advantages that education and colleges were afforded by COVID was some changing of rules. So I remember our accreditation, we're with the Higher Learning Commission as well as ABHE. They came out and said, if you want to work with another college, you don't have to go through our approval anymore, which was a big process in the day. They said, if you're both accredited with us, you guys work it out. So all of a sudden, it was a great, you know, it just made life easier to do that. So we began looking at things, and I'll tell you this. Let me add this real quickly to this. We were on probation several years ago. I mean, I inherited everything crazy, and I learned, and so I developed a funnel by how we evaluated. We evaluated everything, every program, every class, every faculty member, every staff member. We evaluated everything. And so we began looking at this degree program and asking these questions. Does it fit our mission? And there were several things that didn't. Does it fit our mission? Then I asked the question, is it good? Just because you have something doesn't mean you do a good job at it.
Right.
You know, I think sometimes we make the mistake of keeping things we don't do well. Will it populate? Is there enough interest? And the last thing is, will it make money?
Right.
We make that mistake all the time in the Christian world.
Well,
but
higher ed in general, it also makes that mistake.
Will it make money? So our business degrees were just booming. So that's where we began looking. Like many colleges, that's the most popular degree. So we really enhanced and supported that, established partnerships. And again, this was not... the name change and rebrand was done really at the end of all of that stuff. It wasn't the beginning, like, hoping that will attract enough students to allow us to do those things. This was a result of internal, change and focus for the future, not on the beginning end of it.
Right. Well, one of the things that I noticed too is that, nursing is one of the highest, one of the fastest growing areas, healthcare. And tell us about your partnership with Southwest Baptist University's Mercy College of Health Professions, because that was kind of a big deal to be able to start offering that as part of your professional, the business parts of that.
Yeah, that's been a great thing. So years ago, there was interest, even before I got here, in having a nursing partnership with our missions. So that was the thought, that people could go abroad and do medical mission work. Yeah. So we partnered with a local college that did nursing. And when they began that partnership, the schedules worked. We have Monday, Wednesday classes and Tuesday, Thursday classes. And that schedule worked, but then they changed their schedule. And it didn't work. Their schedule did not work with ours. And so it was a problem. And so, we reached out to Southwest Baptist. They have an actual campus in Springfield. All of their healthcare students come to this campus in Springfield. So we met with them, and they were fantastic. And their schedule works with ours. They love our students. Our students get to go to a place that's like-minded in doctrine and beliefs and teaching approach. So we developed an MOU, an articulation agreement. So we offer a lot, just more than just nursing, but a lot of health science degrees through them. But as a small college, we just can't do that. We can't turn on a nursing program or whatever. So, but what we found out is this: our parents, our families, our churches, they want what we have. They want our atmosphere. They want our students to get our Bible classes. They want our students to get their doctrine. They want them in a safe, conservative, Christian environment with our values and our rules and standards in place. But they also want that degree. And so having these strategic partnerships have really made it possible. So they've been a great partner. And we've learned a lot about partnerships through this process.
You've also leaned into athletics as part of this growth. So would you mind sharing what role athletics has played in the broader rebrand strategy?
Sure. I'll tell you, when I got here, we were bad. And honestly, sometimes when you're bad, your coaches try and recruit students that are good, but they weren't always a good fit.
Yeah.
So as a Bible college, we had some interest from some students, but we just weren't great. And so honestly, it's a tough thing to talk about, but I let go 4 coaches my first 5 years here. 4 basketball coaches my first 5 years here. We're just not going to go there with students that don't fit here. I don't care if we win or lose. I've never put that pressure on coaches. My desire is that we produce godly young men and godly young women. And so I finally decided, though, that if we're going to do athletics, then we're going to do it right. So we put the right people in the right place. And I'll tell you, one of the most important things that I do, I did it twice today. I did it 3 times yesterday. I meet with every student that comes on campus and their parents. And I go over, they can tell, everybody here can tell you my little speech. We're a small, private, conservative Christian university. And I make it very clear, this is who we are. If you want that, great. I explain each of those words, great. But if that's not you, you're welcome to find another college. You can get a degree any place. You can play it at a lot of places. But if you're going to come here, if you're going to play here, these are the things that you need to understand. And man, parents love it. Honestly today, I can't be conservative enough for the parents. Yeah. Students, they don't always understand. And I can tell if I got somebody sitting in front of me that just come to play ball. So then I hammer home, some things so they understand. So there's nobody that comes here that's surprised where we stand on moral issues, cultural issues, the Bible, all of that is pretty clear. But that's led to such a great atmosphere because we all know. Everybody's here, and we understand that. So I mentioned before the day of the rebrand, our coaches, they could not wait for this to happen because they knew it would enhance their recruiting. Yeah. It was hard to recruit to Baptist Bible College to play serious athletics. But now, as Mission University, they can recruit well. We are really good. We're small. We don't play hardly anybody our size. We play colleges 10 times, 20 times our size, and we hang. We're good. We're really, really good. And a lot of that has to do with the coaches. What I've learned is, and just advice for other guys, I've been asked about this. Our coaches are very well connected to the local travel teams. So they know that we recruit local. Nobody's going to come to Springfield, Missouri from Springfield and watch somebody that's from Florida. But they'll come and see their nephew or their grandson, and they'll bring everybody with them.
Yeah.
So it's enhanced, the excitement and fun. Tonight is our first home volleyball game. In just a few minutes, we have a big tailgate party, and we're all going to go out there and have a lot of fun, and then go cheer. So we've really made we've embraced it, but they are great Christian young men and women. I'm very proud of who we are, both on and off the court. So it's very important. If you're going to do it, I just do it right. Make sure I personally stick my nose in and make sure they understand who we are, our mission, what mission is all about. So
we talk about mission, and the fact that you're Mission University is so much easier to talk about that. But I also think the fact that is one of the fastest ways to do mission drift is if you are not paying attention to everybody that's coming through the door.
That's right.
And so I think that I give you kudos for that idea of meeting with each of the families to kind of underscore that, because the last thing that people want are surprises on first day. What do you mean I can't do this? And
right.
What do you mean we don't need that?
That's
and
exactly
so
right.
That's great. So now that all this dust is settled with the name and the rebranding, are you starting to see new types of students or families engaging with Mission Universities that they might not had in the past?
Absolutely. And again, I don't want to give the false impression that our name change helped. It's not a silver bullet. A lot of the work is all behind the backgrounds of recruiting, marketing. It's all so very, very important. But it has opened the door. And so I remember having this discussion with Tim Fuller. We engaged with him for a couple of years. We might have been his last visit. Before he passed. I loved him, and he had this, he talked me through the process of, so you're of the college world, you're in the Christian college world. In the Christian college world, you're in the Baptist independent, world, and of that world, there's other players. You're in that much, your pool is only that big. So he said he was all for. He was one of the guys I asked to review our name process and our name change. He loved the name.
Yeah.
He helped me. God bless him. I love him.
Yeah.
So it has helped us. So we don't shy away from telling anybody we're still Baptist. In fact, we kept that name. That is still the name of our ministry and theological, college and seminary, Baptist Bible College and Theological Seminary. We've kept that for our ministry and biblical studies, because that's still who we are. But it has opened the door, to a lot of people that never would have considered us. I'm probably every visit this week. I don't think they were from Baptist backgrounds. They're believers, but they like everything that they heard. They like everything that they saw. They agree with everything that they heard. They know who we are. And I explained, we just changed our name. You know who we were. And this is why, our name was what it was. So it has turned out better than I thought it would. I am very pleased. We had the long process, and I know it was frustrating, waiting to go through all we did, but it turned out right. All of that helped, and it was a blessing. The people on campus, our own trustees, and the supporters in our movement, the outside voices. Again, I do think having the long process was very, very beneficial.
Yeah. I agree. And Troy, before you go to that final questions, I do want to just point out for our listeners the fact that I think one of the things that a rebrand does, whether you do a name change or you're just honing in more tightly on your name, on your brand, it provides clarity. It provides clarity for your internal audiences. It provides clarity for recruitment. It provides clarity for athletics. And I think that's one thing that I really appreciate about what Mission University has done, is that there was intentionality of clarity. They realized that, our name might be holding us back. there are all kinds of things that might be holding back your institution. But I think approaching it with clarity, and that's one of the things I'm seeing with I was with David Hogue from the CCCU recently, and he and I were talking about the schools that we see and where enrollment's coming in this fall. And he asked me, what are you seeing? And I said, the strong are getting stronger and the weak are getting weaker. And what I see is the weak are the ones who are trying to grab everything. They're trying to stay with the way they've done things all along and make it work in a new paradigm. And that doesn't work anymore. But the ones that are really getting stronger are the ones that are saying, this is who we are. We put a stake in the ground. If you like that, come join us. If you don't, move on. They're the ones that are saying, this is what we believe. And this is who we are. And this is what you're going to get here. And that clarity, I think, is something that's so valuable in today's world for various reasons. And we don't need to get into that. But I think that people value when you are clear with who you are, no matter who they are. And I think that we owe that to them. And so that would just be one thing I would add here at the end.
Mark, we would love if you could close out this conversation by offering a final piece of advice for marketing and enrollment leaders looking to drive deeper engagement.
I think one of the important parts of this that I would share is get the right supporters in place. Who is a respected person, a trusted person, a wise person that other people will see engaged in this process, that supports this decision, that they'll look at me and say, oh, you just want, doing this for this reason or the college or whatever. But that guy, speaks. And when he speaks, people listen. Get the right people in the right place, people that are trusted, people that speak well. And honestly, I've not been, and I think other people have contacted you, but I've not been afraid to throw out that we worked with Bart Kaler. I put it out there because it gives us credibility that we went through the professional process. We went through the legal process. We had the right people in the right place helping us to make the right decision. And so that's all along I've said, this is the right name for the right place at the right time. So looking toward the future, I can see that name lasting for a long time.
That's
all
great.
That help.
Congratulations on that, Mark.
Thank you.
Dr. Mark Milioni, president at Mission University. Mark, for anyone who would like to contact you for further advice or just to connect with you and start a conversation, how is your preferred way for them to reach out to you? What would that be?
Well, first they could start at our website, mission.edu, that great URL. But if they want to get a hold of me, it's simply president@mission.edu.
Bart, do you have any final thoughts before we close out our episode?
I think just going back to a couple of things that I've already said, just to pull them out, is being intentional and courageous. I think is one of the most valuable assets that you can have going into this time of higher ed. I mean, we've got the enrollment cliff, we've got the search cliff, we've got AI, we've got, just the way people think about higher ed. We got the threat of the trades. And I mean, we have to figure out how we present ourselves. And I think being intentional, being clear, and being courageous to do that. I think Mark and Mission University is a good example of that. But again, I think it just comes down to, you have to ask the hard questions and you have to be willing to listen to what those answers are. And it has to happen internally to start with, but then you need help on the outside. And, certainly, I didn't want this to turn into a commercial, but if you need that help, I'm happy to help you. And if I can't help you, I'll point you into people that can. But that's just something that I think is important is there are people that are here to help you and that really want to see you succeed. And so, again, Mark, thanks for coming on today. It's been a pleasure to have you in this role. I know we have a chance to talk a lot of other places, but to have it in this format was a lot of fun.
I'm honored. Thank you so much.
And to our audience, thank you for tuning in to the Higher Ed Marketer Podcast. If you found today's conversation helpful, please hit that share button and text it to a friend. And to be sure to join our growing community of higher ed professionals on LinkedIn at the Higher Ed Marketer. The Higher Ed Marketer Podcast is powered by Kaler Solutions, your go-to solutions partner for higher ed mission-fit marketing strategies, enrollment, and branding needs. Bart and I will look forward to seeing you next week with another great episode.
The Higher Ed Marketer podcast is proud to be a part of the Higher Ed Marketer Podcast Network. Discover even more conversations, resources, and tools to help you grow your institution at thehigheredmarketer.com, your go-to community for all things higher ed marketing and leadership.